Welcome back to another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann. I am Eddie Muller. This is Ann Hawkins, Director of Communications for the Film Noir Foundation. And we've chatted, we're both feeling good. We're ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
With this edition. I have scanned some of these questions and they're really, really good. So I'm very happy about doing this installment, and it's not too hot. The last time we did one of these, I felt like I was just going to drown in flop sweat here, but not so bad today. So I'm ready to rock. Charlotte is ready to rock as well. I see her making her peering over. She looks like Kilroy was here. She's just her eyes are like popping up on the frame. It's good.
And she licks me too, so I think it's a good sign. Okay, here are my questions, and this is from Kathleen. Her first question: when do you plan to resume the in-person Noir City festivals? Also, are there plans for another online Noir City festival like the one you did last year with the AFI Silver?
This has become a tradition that this is the first question of every installment that we do. Yes, we will return. The Castro Theater, where we want to return in January, has not as of yet reopened. There is an event that is supposed to be happening there within the next 2 weeks. And then I'll be able to get in and make an assessment of the lay of the land, the condition of things at this point. But that is the plan. I do want to say, however, for folks in the Southern California area, we will be back much sooner than that. Although it's not a Noir City festival, we are doing a little abbreviated Summer Noir Festival at the Hollywood American Legion Post 43 in Hollywood on July 9th to the 11th. I will be introducing some of the films virtually. Our colleague at the foundation, Alan Rohde, will actually be there in person. This will be an in-theater event, and it's a beautiful venue. I don't know if you've ever been there, Ann, but it is really nice. They've refurbished that. It's an American Legion Post, and the theater is just fantastic. So we're going to be showing, and these are 35 millimeter prints, Nightmare Alley, and God, I'm already drawing a blank on what at that showing with. Everything's double bills. Nightmare Alley, and I know Mildred Pierce and Thieves Highway and The Narrow Margin and Loophole and Cry Danger. I'm just forgetting what the second film on that opening night is behind Nightmare Alley. But and all of those are 35 millimeter prints, but for Thieves Highway, which is a gorgeous DCP. So that's July 9th to 11th. And I think that tickets will be available online shortly, if they aren't already when this is up on Facebook.
Yeah, they will definitely be online then.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And the other part of that question was, yes, there will be more online festivals. I'm looking forward to planning that with the AFI Silver that we did it with last year for the International Festival, and it will probably be another internationally themed festival.
Yeah, well, that's great because those are always my favorite of our festivals.
Yep.
You know,
probably around the same time. So look for that in late October, early November. That's my expectation.
And Kathleen's second question: can something be hard-boiled but not noir, or vice versa? What is the difference between hard-boiled and noir, and what are some good examples of each in film and literature?
That's a good question. That's a question that we used to discuss all the time, not with film, but with genre fiction, crime fiction. I would attend these conferences, the Boucher Con and all this stuff. And I was always on these panels where I was the noir guy debating noir with a hard-boiled person. And in those terms, and I don't want to mix up film noir with literary noir, but for the purposes of this question, I kind of will. Yeah, detective fiction is largely hard-boiled, and generally the protagonist wins in hard-boiled fiction, and in noir fiction, they don't.
Yeah.
And I'm taking a very male slant on this because hard-boiled has traditionally been a very male-dominated style. But that's usually it. I mean, it's tough, but the good guy wins in the end, and that doesn't hold true for noir. Noir is by and large about futility, and so I used to joke and say if a woman walks in the detective's office and hires him to find out if her husband is cheating on her, and then he ends up dealing with this and uncovering all these deep dark family secrets and exposes all of this corruption, and then at the end he goes back to his office and sits there with his bottle and he's alone. That's hard boiled. And if that woman comes in and says, I want you to spy on my husband, and then he ends up having an affair with her, and then they conspire to murder her husband, and then they all end up dead at the end, that's noir.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's like a perfect definition, actually. And I think too, for me, like I always consider like Mickey Spillane hard-boiled and not noir.
Yeah.
To me, that's
absolutely, because Mike Hammer is infallible. He's not going to fail at his mission.
Yeah.
I thought it was so funny. The last thing I showed on Noir Alley was the Blue Gardenia, and I had forgotten that there's this great little parody of Mickey Spillane that runs through the Blue Gardenia, where Jeff Donnell loves reading books by Mickey Mallet. Oh, the latest Mickey Mallet mystery is out, and it's very, very funny, the little satire they do, which goes to show you how popular Spillane was at that time. I mean, that was 1951, and everybody was, the bandwagon with Fred Astaire was satirizing Mickey Spillane, and then this movie was satirizing Mickey Spillane. But I love that name, Mickey Mallet. The latest Mickey Mallet mystery.
And her third question, can police procedurals be noir? Is the propaganda element that is often found in police procedurals contrary to the noir ethos?
Oh, I like that. Was that propaganda?
Propaganda.
Oh, that's nice. That's a nice turn of phrase. I haven't heard that before. Well done. Yeah, they police procedurals can be noir if they were made during that original noir era. Then they were part of the whole movement. So, technically, I don't think that, for example, The Naked City, Dasson's The Naked City, is not nearly as noir as Night in the City, which has as its protagonist the loser, right, Harry Fabian. I mean, that's the most noir that Dasson did, and then I would say Thieves Highway, and then The Naked, Brute Force obviously is like the most noir prison movie ever made. But in that era, I would say so. But then later on, police procedurals become less noir unless there's something that is hugely compromising the cop, right? Like, I don't think of Where the Sidewalk Ends or Rogue Cop or these aren't police procedurals. These are dirty cop movies, right? So I tend to not think of them that way. But then when you look at something like Mystery Street, just the fact that it's photographed by John Alton and it's like right in the core of the whole noir wave in Hollywood, it's pretty hard to separate it and discount it from the movement, even though I wouldn't put Mystery Street out there on a list of, this is emblematic of noir.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like, it's interesting she brought up propaganda, because of course it made me think about Jack Webb and Dragnet, because he worked very closely with the LAPD and was obviously, pro-police, I guess. And but
I would say so.
Yeah. But I do believe, though, but some of the Dragnet stories are especially on the radio show, could be very noirish. And then there's one episode of the TV show where this Japanese woman, who I think was brought over probably as a a GI bride, is like raped. I mean, they imply that, and murdered. And it's really interesting because it's the one time where you really see Webb's character get completely unhinged. He is so upset by what happened to her, and it's like one of them. It's, I think, kind of one of the best episodes, and it's very noirish and has like a real edge to it that a lot of his episodes of Dragnet just don't normally have.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. There's also when I think about noir, a lot of them are about the turmoil that individual people are going through, and the story is kind of hooked to them and follows their story arc. But then there are also noir things where it's the overall depiction of the world in which the characters live that sort of makes it very noir. That's why The Naked City is like showing you at that time a New York that nobody else was really showing you. Mark Hellinger wasn't afraid to show, how awful it was, as well as how much he loved it for all of that. So a lot of police movies are kind of like that, where they're delving into how crummy and corrupt everything is, but you're riding along with the guys who are trying to make it better. But then it gets really complicated, because when you get into like the books that Joe Wambaugh wrote, he was a cop who had a real jaundiced view of and you read a book like The Onion Field, or see that movie, or even The New Centurions, which Richard Fleischer directed later on. I mean, those are like cop noir. Where the cops aren't really very heroic. They're just guys, challenged to maintain some shred of integrity when it seems impossible, given the job they have to do. So, you see this, in TV shows like The Shield and stuff like that, where it's like a gangster show, only they're cops.
Yeah.
So, it's a very good question. Kathleen, is this Kathleen from Chicago? Kathleen Geyer?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, she always asks good questions. Thank you, Kathleen.
And this one's from Adam, and it's another 2 questions. On a past episode of Ask Getty, you had discussed punk rock and likened it to film noir as metal music is to horror. I'm curious to know if there are any punk rock songs that have a film noir theme that you could recommend.
Well, funny you should mention that. Here comes a plug. We have coming up in a either the next issue or the issue after that of the Noir City magazine, we have a story on this, written by my friend and colleague Chris D, who was the leader of one of the seminal punk bands in Los Angeles, the Flesh Eaters and the Divine Horsemen, Chris's 2 bands. And in fact, I was just talking with Chris on the phone today, and about this article he's writing that discusses this very thing and the influence that noir, the books and the films, had on his development as an artist, and where he sees all this cross-pollination between noir and punk. And I certainly saw it and felt it in San Francisco in the original punk movement. I thought, Crime was one of the original punk bands in the town. And there was certainly an anarchistic, godless attitude toward punk that you could see in a lot of noir. Also, it's interesting. Chris told me today that this is really interesting. John Doe, who was, with Exene, was the leader of the band X, one of my favorite punk bands, is starring in a remake of DOA. That is
you're kidding.
No, that is now in post-production. In fact, he plays the Frank Bigelow role.
Awesome.
In the movie. So yeah, I'm hoping that's good. But I mean, if you want to know, is there a connection between punk and noir? Yeah, John Doe is playing Frank Bigelow in a remake of DOA.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely going to tell my brother Sean, because he's a huge X fan, as the one who got me into X back in the day. And I also wanted just a quick story about Chris D, which is funny because, you know, I'm friends with him on Facebook because obviously we have a lot of crossover stuff. And my ex-boyfriend, Brendan, who you know, was hugely into punk. Like he used to run away from San Diego and come to San Francisco and couch surf and go to shows and stuff. And he said, "Oh, you're friends with Chris D?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And we started talking and he was like, "Oh, you realize I was friends?" He goes, "You know, he was in these bands." And and I was like, "No, it's actually, it was just really the film stuff is how I know him."
Oh, that's it. That's interesting. You know, it's a quick funny story how Chris and I met. You know, I had seen the Flesh Eaters perform several times back in the day when they would, you know, because I loved all those bands, X and the Blasters, and you know, and there was a real interesting crossover between the punk movement and the roots rock movement, because you had the Blasters and Los Lobos and the Plugs and X and the Flesh Eaters. And I would go to see them. And then when I did the first Noir festival at the Egyptian Theater, I was in the offices of the American Cinematheque, and I met this guy who was like an assistant programmer and in charge of shipping all the films. And we were talking and, "Oh man, I really dig this movie that you're programming," and blah, blah, blah. And I said, "Why do I know you, man?" And he goes, "Maybe you've seen the Flesh Eaters." And it was Chris. That was Chris D. And we've been friends ever since. Yeah, interesting. Chris Desjardins, for those who don't know, he that's the full name, is Chris Desjardins, but just Chris D will do for punk.
Okay, and Adam's second question: where can I find a copy of Dark City?
Right here on my desk. I'm sorry, they mean the new one? The
Yes.
new, which I should have at hand to hold up and show?
Yeah.
They will be available at better bookstores everywhere. So, starting, I guess, July 20th. The pub date was pushed back from
Yes.
July 6th because of all of the logistical entanglements due to the pandemic. But I have been told that July 20th is the date. You can get it on, you know, that big behemoth service that everybody knows about. You can also get it on the TCM store, and you can get a personally stamped and inscribed volume if you buy it online through the Larry Edmonds bookstore in Hollywood.
And just to backtrack,
But obviously it's going to be available a lot more places, but those are the ones that I feel very confident in saying, I know they have placed their orders already and the books are there.
And you can also always special order it from your local independent bookstore as well.
Absolutely. And I mean that sincerely. You know, if you're people who support the mission of the Film Noir Foundation, you should also support the survival of independent bookstores, even if you're paying the full retail price, because you'll see these online outfits will always cut the price.
Yeah.
And, you know, which means that everybody all along the line is taking a little bit less because of that, including yours truly. So, you know, I would say go support. Uh-oh. Hold on. I also lost. Hold on. I don't know what just happened. Do you not see or hear me?
I am just getting your photo up here and no actual video.
There I am.
Okay, here I am.
Okay.
Okay.
We just had a big glitch. Maybe we'll cut that out. We'll see. But by all means, support your local retail bookstore. And if they don't have it in stock, first shame them for not having it in stock, and then order it from them.
And I also want to backtrack for a second because you did mention one of the upcoming Noir City magazines having that article on punk music. So just so you all know, the way you get the magazine is you subscribe to our email list. You can do that at filmnoirfoundation.org, and then you donate $20 or more to the Film Noir Foundation, and then you get Noir City for a year.
And Charlotte handles all fulfillment.
That's true. But she falls asleep a lot, so it's a little slow. Okay, where were we? So we did Adam. So Randy asks, Gun Crazy is my favorite noir of all time. So when I recently discovered that Eddie wrote a book, Gun Crazy, The Origins of American Outlaw Cinema, I promptly bought and read the book, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm wondering what other films Eddie or yourself would consider essential entries in the canon of outlaw cinema, noir or otherwise.
For my purposes, I was thinking of outlaw themes and things. I mean, I tried to make that title have a double meaning in that they're movies about outlaws, but they're also made in kind of an outlaw fashion.
Yeah.
Because I felt like the King brothers who produced the movie were outliers in Hollywood, and they did things not in the established way. They were kind of mavericks or outlaws, but I didn't want to say maverick cinema because it made more sense to say outlaw. But, you know, all of those, I think of those movies in terms of like lovers on the run, criminal lovers on the run kind of things. So, you know, that's stuff like You Only Live Once and They Live by Night, the Nick Ray movie, both of which predated Gun Crazy, but were more made within the system. So I didn't really think of them as this outlaw style of filmmaking. But, you know, obviously there's Breathless, which Gun Crazy inspired, but, you know all this from reading the book, and Bonnie and Clyde and all that stuff. You know, I would not consider things like White Heat and stuff like that to be really outlaw movies, although they're about outlaws. And again, I think if you looked up, I did this when I was writing the book, if you look up outlaw cinema, 99% of it is going to be Westerns because they relate outlaws to Westerns.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what I was doing. I'm thinking of it in terms of like regular people who suddenly become criminals. What was the movie? God, somebody's going to know this, even though I can't think of it right now. There was a movie a few years ago that Luke Perry made with Ashley Judd that was kind of a Gun Crazy kind of thing where they became outlaws. They were like this young American couple who became outlaws. And I remember kind of liking that movie. So much so that I can't remember the title, I'm embarrassed to say, but see, that was the person who last time said, Eddie, you have such a great memory, and now I can't remember the title of that movie. Anyway, I'm sure other people will fill in. Anne, do you have any particular outlaw movies that I'm not thinking of? I mean, there are plenty of foreign films that qualify for this, but I don't know, because I'm kind of, like I said, I kind of limit that to, you know, Lovers on the Lam is my, I think TCM did a day of those not that long ago, Lovers on the Lam movies.
Oh, Tomorrow's Another Day.
Good one, yes. Although it's questionable whether they're outlaws. They're definitely lovers on the lam, but it's questionable whether they actually did commit the crime that they think they are being accused of in that movie. But that's a really good choice. And there's the Italian poster for it right back there on the wall.
Yeah,
so
and it's just
that was a big hint. You were looking at the poster. That must be
no, honestly, it's just the only thing that really popped in my mind. And also, I just the only reason I saw it is you screened it at one of the North cities, and it's just a very touching film too.
It is.
I mean, there's something just really touching about it, and just I don't know, especially just when Steve Cochran's like eating that pie at the diner, because he's been in prison so long. You see, the sort of has Arrested Development because he went to prison fairly young, so he hasn't sort of emotionally matured. And it's also a very unusual role for Steve Cochran to play a kind of more naive, sweet character. That's definitely, against the type that he was usually cast as.
Well, it's interesting because they never will say this in one of these old Hollywood movies, but there's a lot of these noir films like Gun Crazy and like Tomorrow is Another Day, where it is apparent to me that the male protagonist is a virgin.
Yeah.
And they never can say that, but that's kind of what is their motivating force in these movies.
Yeah.
And that is a stretch for Steve Cochran.
No shit. Sorry.
Yeah. So, Steve, you're going to play a virgin. And he goes, what's that? Because I think he probably lost his virginity at like 6 years old or something. Because
he's a pretty wild child.
He had some experience. But anyway, that was a good choice. Good choice.
And just since we're talking about it, where can people purchase Gun Crazy? The origin of
they go to the
cinema.
You get that from me. Sometimes I get a wild hair, and it's like, I'm just going to publish this book myself because I wanted to do it in a certain way. So that's Blackpool Productions, is the little production house publishing imprint that I have, and you can just go online to blackpoolproductions.com and you can buy it that way.
And this is from Calvin. When is repeat performance going to be released, please?
Soon, I hope. There's been a little bit of a snag because the rights to the movie shifted from a company called Films Around the World, which now Film Detective, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, which is owned by a bigger company called Cinedyne, now has that Films Around the World library. And so it will be coming out in this kind of umbrella thing. It'll still be a Flicker Alley Film Noir Foundation branded release, but it will be coming through Film Detective via Cinedyne. And we're just trying to get all of the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and the special features produced, so that there'll be a lot of bonus features involved as well. So before the end of the year is my hope.
And I just want to, once again, I know I've said this before, but that is my favorite film of all our restorations. I really, really love that movie and really highly recommended it. And it's not just because it's our project. It's just an incredible film. Book's good too.
Oh, good. I'm glad you read the book, because the book is totally different than the movie. They made Sheila the protagonist of the movie, where Barney is the protagonist of the book. It's a totally different thing. So, but I'm glad to hear you say that, Ann.
Yeah. Let's see. This is from Doug. In answer to the question from June 10th about someone seeing Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid on TV with added scenes, that person was not wrong. TV networks constantly added footage to films that ran shorter than 100 minutes. Since Dead Men Didn't Wear Plaid was only 88 minutes, then yes, Universal added 12 minutes of deleted footage. Back in the 90s, I recorded Robert Bitten's The Late Show when it was shown on late night television and watched it the next day. I was astounded to see a brand new scene where producer Robert Altman brought back the Salt and Pepper team from Homicide Cops, Dayton and Green from The Long Goodbye, played by the same actors. The Late Show runs 93 minutes, so they needed an additional 7.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Doug sent me this information in a separate email, not to the Ask Eddie address, and that kind of fascinates me. I'm going to explore this a little more, because it's honestly the first time I'd ever really heard of that, because I was so used to hearing tales of how they would cut movies to fit them into time slots on television. And I've certainly seen enough noir films that were cut. When I finally saw the film, it was like, wow, I've never seen this scene before, because they cut it for length on Dialing for Dollars or something like that. But to actually have scenes inserted in the movie to make it longer is kind of mind-blowing. But I guess, I presume that Doug knows what he's talking about, because if they knew this in advance, they would probably set aside stuff and say, here's the 7 minutes we're going to add in for television. They probably already had it figured out, because the studio would have said, well, when we sell it to TV, it's going to be this length and not, whatever you want theatrically, fine, but this is the way it's going to be on TV. So that's really interesting. So that fellow who wrote in, I guess he did see those clips. I mean, it's entirely possible.
Yeah, and then, I mean, Halloween's very famous about that, because when Halloween ran on television for the first time, they were shooting Halloween 2. So they actually shot additional scenes for the first Halloween film to lengthen the time, so it'd be the right running time for the TV release.
Okay, interesting. Of course, if it has to do with Halloween, I know that you know every single thing about it. Yeah.
Okay, and this is from Harriet. I really enjoyed the intrigue of Wells's identity thriller, Mr. Arcadian. Why doesn't it get more attention? The unconventional style seems so contemporary.
Yes, Mr. Arcadian. It's because man, my memory is shot. I must have been watching too much baseball this weekend. It's because the central performer, whose name escapes me right now, the actor who plays the lead, is so poor. He is so poor and unmemorable that it hurts the entire movie. Plus, the movie has kind of bad sound design, if you ask me. And while it's a very intriguing film, and I do like it, I think people see it as a bit of a mess, and so it just doesn't have much of a reputation. Plus, it was made so much on the fly that it's hard to find really, really good. Over the years, it was hard to find it in a really good print, or something that wasn't kind of where the print wasn't as mangled as the movie itself. And I just think all those things have kind of conspired against the film being well known. If there was a real actor in the role of, the investigator, the guy who's playing the same role from Citizen Kane, I think it would have had more of a chance.
Yeah, but didn't Criterion release it?
They did.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm just saying that that's a recent development.
Yeah.
I mean, in the course of my lifetime, that movie was always kind of a weird thing for all those reasons I just mentioned. Of course, God bless Criterion. They've gone in and done their best to restore it and, give it all due respect, and perhaps even more than its due respect. But, it's funny. I just, a piece of good news that I'll share right now to the folks who have hung in this far. I just saw our new restoration on Friday. I went down to LA and saw the Argyle Secrets, which is our new, first screening at Roundabout, the production house, and it looked absolutely spectacular. It's great. This movie has never looked this good. But it also reminds me a little bit of Mr. Arcadian. It's a crazy movie with a lot of eccentric characters coming in at all angles, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. But just like I don't know who was asking this question, but just like they're saying why that Wells's movie is so entertaining, the same thing applies to the Argyle Secrets. It's not really meant to be taken seriously, and it's interesting that Argyle Secrets is written and directed by Cyril Enfield, who is a protege of Orson Welles, and you really can see what he gleaned from Welles as a storyteller and a stylist is very much on display in the Argyle Secrets.
Okay, this one is from Michael in Florida. I do a podcast at lifeasjazz.com, and lately I veered into film scores. Program number 14 on my site focused on Max Steiner. When I searched for the score to The Big Sleep, it was nowhere to be found. I looked everywhere I could think of, including Discogs, Amazon, of course, eBay, and even the archive department at Brigham Young University, where a huge chunk of Steiner's work rests. No luck. The score to The Big Sleep is considered one of his finest works. Can you give me any leads on this?
It's owned by Warner Brothers. That's what I'm going to say. Now Warner Media. So, I mean, that's where it is. I don't know if you've read Stephen Smith's biography, Music by Max Steiner, which just came out last year, but that's like the definitive work on Max Steiner. Steve is tremendous with his musical knowledge, and he wrote the definitive biography of Bernard Herrmann, you know, A Heart at Fire Center, and this, which I'm tempted to, I'm going to knock everything over if I try to reach the book, but I've got it right here at hand. But I highly recommend that. And I cannot tell you, it's all just a rights thing. You know, if there's a problem, it's just because there's some entanglement perhaps between the Steiner estate and Warner Media or something. But that would be the only reason. I know that the you know, the fanfare, the Steiner's fanfare, you know, that precedes the Maltese Falcon and all those things, has been reproduced many times on recordings. But I don't know what the story is with The Big Sleep.
This is from Kathy and Aaron. Hi, Eddie, Ann, and Bronte Cadiz. While watching Crossfire, I wondered what movie Mitchell was watching as he hid in the theater. Lo and behold, the score to Enchanted Cottage arose, a movie made 2 years earlier, also starring Robert Young and scored by Roy Webb. I am wondering if anyone else noticed this. One wonders if it could have been a tribute to the fact that Enchanted Cottage was Robert Young's favorite movie, or perhaps the perfect way for Webb to reuse a calming spiritual score to soothe the raw nerves of the Mitchell character. It seems a subtle yet deliberate choice, plus the pragmatic fact that it was already written and owned by the same studio.
I think reason number 3 should be reason number 1.
I do too.
Yeah, and then, but the rest all make perfect sense. But that's very good detective work to suss out that was the score to the Enchanted Cottage. But you see this in a lot of movies. I mean, when you watch enough of them and you start to pick up on the way certain studios operate, you will see them I mean, this is why Street Scene at 20th Century Fox is just used over and over and over again, is because they owned it, right? And it became the kind of nocturnal noir music for that studio. But that's why they do it. You know, you'll see a movie marquee, and it'll always, if it's a Fox film and then they go by a movie theater, it'll be a Fox film playing at the movie theater. You know, I mean, that's just the way it works. They're certainly not going to advertise anything by a rival studio, and they're not going to pay money to any rival or anybody. If they own it, they're going to use it.
And this is a two-parter from Liz. Dear Anne, I would love to hear yours and Eddie's opinions of the 1945 horror noir film, The Beast with Five Fingers. In many ways, it mines the same vein as 1947's The Lost Moment and 1948's Corridor of Mirrors. Your views would be highly appreciated.
You know, Anne, it has been so long since I have seen that movie that I'm like, I need to revisit that.
Yeah.
The Beast with Five Fingers. I have not seen that film in probably 45 years. So, wow, somebody has kind of stumped me on this one. I'll come back to that. I'll tell you what I think on the next installment of Ask Eddie and Ann, because I don't really have a hot take on The Beast with Five Fingers, because I know that a lot of people wonder, is that a film noir or isn't it a film noir or whatever? But to date, I've kind of avoided having an opinion on it because I haven't watched it again in like 45 years. So,
yeah, I think it's been a good 25 years since I've seen that film.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you.
wow,
But
this is embarrassing.
I know. But I would like to give a shout out for Corridor of Mirrors, which we played a couple of years ago
Yeah.
at North City, and I just loved that movie. That was just an excellent film, and very small part for Christopher Lee in there.
Christopher Lee. I would say that's not even a part.
No, it's more of
It's an early appearance by
it's an
Christopher
early
Lee.
appearance for him.
Yes, yes.
So handsome.
But that is a really terrific movie. But now I know what I'm going to be watching. Riders of Justice first, and then I'll back it up with The Beast with Five Fingers.
Okay. And Liz's second question, I have a question for Eddie. Is he familiar with a Pine Thomas film called The Big Caper, 1957, with Rory Calhoun? Yeah.
Yeah, Rory Calhoun, and I think James Gregory is in that. Yes, I am familiar with it. I have seen it. I mean, how embarrassing is that? Like, I know The Big Caper, but Beast with Five Fingers, like, I don't really have much of a memory of that one. But yeah, it's suburban noir, and yeah, he like buys a gas station, and he's kind of plotting this whole thing of this big heist, and then he decides that he starts warming up to life as a sedate suburbanite, and it's not a great film or anything, but it's pretty good. I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying I'm not a huge Rory Calhoun fan.
Yeah.
He just doesn't really do it for me, but he's he's good. There are a lot of independently made films from the latter half of the 1950s, crime films that are waiting to be rediscovered, and they've been overlooked because they don't look anything like the traditional noir stuff. So people they just dismiss them because it's like, well, it doesn't have the shadows, it doesn't have the style, all that stuff. But there's some pretty decent crime movies lurking out there, kind of waiting to be rediscovered from right around this era. And they also are unknown because so many of them were independently made.
Yeah, and
they just disappear.
Yeah, and I really hope the films by the Stones will come more into prominence, because we did, I think, like showed 3 or 4 out of them at one of our North City festivals, and I had not seen any of their work, and I just completely was blown away by how good and really suspenseful. Like that was their thing. They ramp up the suspense where you're just beside yourself.
Oh yeah, and she was a great editor. Virginia Stone was a terrific film editor, and they worked really well together. And it's funny, I'm discovering these husband and wife teams now, like Joseph and Geraldine Lerner, who did Seaman and Guilty Bystander, which I'm going to be showing on Noir Alley pretty soon, in a couple of weeks. And there's not much written about these husband and wife filmmaking teams. They're not really that well known to general movie fans. But yeah, the Stones were fantastic. And most of what I've talked about or has been written about in the Noir City magazine focuses on their crime movies, but they did other stuff as well. They did disaster movies, and they were really an interesting pair. I think we've talked about them before, but the thing that was interesting about Andrew Stone is he was a Hollywood filmmaker who then became an independent filmmaker, as opposed to the way usually you make an independent film and then Hollywood calls you up from the minor leagues to make a big movie. He went totally the opposite route. And he was, he made, Stormy Weather, and then said, oh, the hell with it, I can do this on my own.
Yeah, well,
you
and
know?
like Collier Young and Ida Lupino.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and Lupino never would have gotten to direct at a studio. You know, that happened because she formed a production company.
She did it herself. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
This one's from Daryl. Yeah, Daryl in Ann Arbor. I would like your thoughts on the movie The Nickel Ride from the mid-'70s. Would you consider it a neo-noir? I really enjoy the film, and especially Jason Miller's performance in the lead role, which is basically a character study movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. I'm doing this neo-noir series on TCM in July, and I really, really wanted to show The Nickel Ride as part of that. But for obviously, you guys know this now, you've heard me say it a million times, for various reasons, usually all legal or something, that didn't happen. I will not give up on that. But that was one of the first movies that really showed the industrial wasteland of Southern California and made that like that's what the movie was about. It was about, you know, grifters and small time criminals and you know, thievery and stuff in that industrial, in the Inland Empire wasteland of Southern California. And yeah, Jason Miller was great in that movie. And that's Robert Mulligan directed that, and very, very underrated. I mean, he did make To Kill a Mockingbird, but he's still a somewhat underrated director. And yeah, I would like to see The Nickel Ride resurrected, because it is pretty great.
And this one's from Dennis. Just curious, whatever happened to the scrapped footage Richard Fleischer filmed for His Kind of Woman before Raymond Burr was cast as Nick Ferraro? Would Howard Hughes have had this destroyed back then? That would have been an amazing special feature on the DVD Blu-ray to see Robert J. Wilkes and Lee Van Cleef's performance in the role.
You're never going to find that. Sorry. It's extremely doubtful that you would ever find footage that never made it into any cut of the film. That's just not going to happen. I mean, if you can't find the original, gas chamber ending of Double Indemnity, you're not going to find stuff that was cut out. You know, I'm sure that was junked. So it's tragic, but you know, there was absolutely no point in hanging on to it. People didn't think the same way back then that they think now.
This is from Brian. A long time ago, I was watching an old black and white film from the late 1950s or early 60s that took place predominantly out in the desert. It was about a maniac who was terrorizing a bunch of people. I recall the ending where the maniac falls into a snake pit and the woman who was being terrorized by him decides to go back and rescue him to get out of the pit. And that's how the movie ends. Any ideas what film this was?
Yes, that's The Sadist with Arch Hall Jr. And yeah.
I'm so happy we got one finally.
Yeah, that's The Sadist. There's no question about it. Although I believe Brian's memory of the ending is a little off because he makes it sound like they save the killer from the pit of snakes, and they don't.
Good.
You know, yeah. There's all kinds of fun. There's all kinds of fun stuff about that movie. And Arch Hall Jr., he was the son of the guy who produced the movie, Arch Hall Sr. Duh. And and there's an actress in that, Helen Hovey, who's really good. She's really good, and should have had a bigger career. But Arch Hall, that character in that film, and I'm going to say that movie is 1960 or 61 or something like that. And he is, if you've seen Dirty Harry, you're right. And Andy Robinson plays Scorpio in Dirty Harry. Arch Hall Jr. is like the original Andy Robinson. He has the same hair, and everything about his performance is like predicting Andy Robinson. And you know, it's a trashy movie, but it's very effective, and it's really good. You should go online to Joe Dante's Trailers from Hell, and Joe does a whole thing about the Sadist, because I believe that Joe has the only print of the film,
Oh,
and that all of its extended life on DVD and everything is all due to Joe Dante and his appreciation for this low budget film. But you got to see the trailer that they used to sell the movie, where it's Arch Hall Sr. pretending to be another person who's the executive producer of the movie and telling people this is the most terrifying cinema experience of all time. And it's hysterically funny, but the movie is actually kind of brutal. I mean, it really is violent for, you know, I was going to say for its time, but it's just violent for any time.
this is probably why it's called The Sadist.
The Sadist.
And this is from John. The more I watch Deception with Betty Davis, Paul Heinrich, and Claude Rains,
the more you're convinced it's film noir.
Yeah, thank you, because I cut off your question when I transferred it to my document. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I guess that's what he's saying.
Yeah. Are there other notable Claude Rains noir performances?
Oh my God.
Yes.
And you go first.
Well, yeah, there's obviously the Unsuspected, which is incredible film, a great book. Once again, a really, really great novel.
Charlotte Armstrong,
and he's wonderful in it. He plays a seemingly benevolent sort of guardian to the protagonist, who's in fact a really horrible human being.
Yes, we don't want to spoil anything now. But yeah, the Unsuspected would have been my first choice too. A role that was originally Michael Curtiz, who I was the first film Michael Curtiz made under his own production company. He like briefly stepped away from Warner Brothers to do his own thing. And that was the first movie that he did. And he wanted Orson Welles to play that part. God, I'm trying to remember what the character's name was. It was because he says it throughout the movie, you know.
Yeah, because he has a radio show.
He's a radio personality who does mystery stories on the radio. I know why you love this movie so much. It's a radio mystery thing.
Yeah.
But he's fantastic in that film. And another one I'm going to highly recommend that's probably going to be a little more difficult to find is a very early film by Ben Hecht called Crime Without Passion, which Claude Rains plays a very, very arrogant attorney who is accused of murder and decides to represent himself. And it's fabulous. This film is sensational. It's one of those like half dozen or so movies that Ben Hecht and Lee Garms, the cinematographer, sort of co-directed. It's a screenplay by Ben Hecht, and then he and Garms co-directed the movie. They made it in New York at Astoria Studios, and it's wild. I mean, I love that movie. Anyway, and there's, you know, he's sensational in Deception. He's just great in that. You know, I'm you know, if you want to consider Notorious a film noir, he's fantastic in Notorious. He actually plays a villain who you feel kind of sympathetic for by the end of the movie.
Oh, I liked him better than the two leads. Not in terms of performance. I meant I had more empathy with his character than I did with the two leads. It's a fantastic performance.
Well, he's kind of the noir character who gets stuck. And like, oh, I don't know why this is happening now. This is not good.
Okay, you're back.
Okay, all right. That was another little glitchy thing that happened. We'll just cut that out.
And so I also wanted to, the film with Mitchum and Faith.
Faith
Dummer,
Demir, Where Danger Lives.
Where Danger Lives, which is just a great film anyway. And he's a very small part in it. But I was watching on the DVD of it, they have this interview with Dick Cavett about the film, and he points out that even though he's in the one scene, he dominates the rest of the film, even though he's not there for the rest of the film. But you know,
I mean that's why Claude Rains was like the MVP of supporting actors, you know, because he was so effective, and he just had that, you know, he did that sort of arrogant, charming arrogance better than anybody, really. And of course, you know, Captain Renault in Casablanca is one of the great supporting roles. I'm not getting into the noir or not debate on Casablanca, but just acknowledging how Claude Rains is so essential to that movie. But there's a few that you should go check out, and I know we're missing all kinds of great Claude Rains performances there, but those really pop out for me.
Yeah, and I just want to say, share some trivia about Claude Rains that I saw. They did a interview with his daughter for the Universal set of the Invisible Man movies, and I did not know this about him. He was born in the East End. He had a heavy Cockney accent and a stutter. But he really, really wanted to be an actor. And that's just incredible to me when you think about his speaking voice and how perfect it is and beautiful. And, you know, it just rings in your ears. And that was amazing to me that he was able to overcome the stutter and the Eastern accent to have such the perfect voice.
That is remarkable, because I just think that, you know, I've made this observation many times, that back then the voices were so extraordinary because actors had theater and radio in their backgrounds by and large before they got to film. And if you worked on radio, you had to have a voice, right? And so many actors today have completely, you know, I couldn't tell you what they sounded like. I cannot tell you what these actors sound like today. But if you played me, you know, Edward G. Robinson, Claude Rains, Humphrey Bogart, Dan Duryea, you know, Richard Conte, Robert Ryan, Richard Widmark, you would know all of them just by their voice. Kirk Douglas, Burt Lancaster, you'd only have to hear the voice. Now, if they played you a clip of an actor, I'm positive I would not be able to identify the actor, right? And sometimes that's because they are geniuses like Daniel Day-Lewis, who just do different voices.
Right.
But most of the time it's just like, I don't know. Whatever.
And a lot of times too, they can't really use their voice to express emotion the way that, you know, and it's really interesting too, because as probably everybody knows, I've been watching a lot of Danish films. And it's amazing because I'll still, even though subtitle, I still turn up the sound because they tend to use their voices really well as an expression of what's going on with the character. And it made me kind of realize that, yeah, you know, I'm not sure that seems to be something that's lost too. You know, like people depend too much on the dialogue, and especially if something's going on underneath what they're actually saying. You have to be able to use your eyes and your voice to be able to, you know, express that,
right,
what's going on.
But it was also very interesting that back when radio was such a predominant form of entertainment, actors had to have distinctive voices to propel the stories along, so you could separate the voices out when you're listening, because you didn't have any, you know, it's not like reading a book where you have attribution. They have to sound different, right? So you can keep things distinct, which was really funny, because when I was watching The Argyle Secrets, our restoration the other day, it began life as a radio play, and it was obvious. It's obvious when you watch the movie that this was a radio play because there's so much expository dialogue, and people are, so much plot is conveyed through the talking, but everybody has an incredibly distinctive voice. And like William Gargan, starting with William Gargan, who had one of these kind of voices, talk like this. And I miss all that stuff. Even, when I was showing the Blue Gardenia in Noir Alley, I watched it again, and it's like, man, everybody in this movie has a tremendous voice. Ann Baxter had a great voice.
Yeah.
And Ann Southern and Jeff Donnell and Conti and Dick Erdman and Raymond Burr. They all had these amazing voices that you could, not that you would want to, but you could just shut your eyes and listen to it, and you'd get everything, and it'd be just as entertaining.
Yeah, and I'd like to also point out, though, in old time radio, there were people, though, that would play more than one role on the same show. And like, there was an episode of Jack Benny where I counted that Mel Blanc did 6 different voices on one episode. And that was a 30-minute show.
It just went haywire again.
We just went haywire again.
Okay, we're back. I don't know whatever it is you're doing, but you're fixing it. I know that's just so. And one of a film noir favorite, Ted DeCorsia, began on radio, and he was a master of dialect. So he would play multiple characters on old radio shows. Again, he was part of the Mercury Theater of the Air. And anyway, we got way off the track.
We did. Okay, let's go. This is from Rick. I really enjoyed The Brothers Rico. Thanks for showing a great film that I had not seen before. Just wondering if you've shown Port of Shadows.
Not yet. We have not shown Port of Shadows, and if it comes up as a film that is available for TCM, I would definitely show it. So we'll see about that.
And this is from Thomas. 6 Bridges to Cross was recently listed to be shown on TCM. I feel this is a noir movie. Wondering why it disappeared and if you think it's noir.
I think I've shown it at one of the Noir City festivals. It's a heist film. It's based on the famous, Boston, the Brinks robbery. The same thing that William Friedkin did base the Brinks job on years later. It's Tony Curtis, and there's a great bit of casting where Sal Mineo plays Tony Curtis as a young man, and it's really good. He studied Tony Curtis's mannerisms and stuff, and he's like doing a Tony Curtis imitation. It's pretty good. I like the film very much. Yeah, Joe Pevney, Sidney Bohm wrote it. Joe Pevney directed it. It's mid-50s, so it doesn't really have a noir look to it, but it's a good movie.
And this is from Ron. How to say noir? Most Americans seem to pronounce the terminal R like an R. Is there an agreement among American English-speaking people as to how to say film noir? Does the R sound completely use a more guttural French accent?
My French friends tell me that the R is actually there. So to say noir, where there is no R at all, is actually incorrect. But I find that in pronouncing it, and when I first started doing all of this, I was an adamant American, saying I'm going to call it noir, film noir. But now my approach is to think about the noir, but don't actually enunciate the noir, and you get noir, where you're not really biting that R, but it's like film noir. Like you're letting the R kind of start to form, and then it just trails off.
You say it so pretty.
That's my enunciation lesson in film noir.
Because every time you say it, I feel like a savage.
Noir is my business.
There you go. which actually sounds like a film noir. This is from Colin. In 1947's Born to Kill, we are treated to a scene in which Sam and Marty share a bed in a rundown hotel room. Throughout the scene, Sam keeps one foot on the floor. Was this intended? Don't make me laugh.
He was trying not to put it up Marty's butt. That was why it was on the floor. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Okay.
Well, that was basically his question. I can just finish reading this. Okay. Was this intended in view of the Hays Code 1 foot rule that required the female or other character to keep 1 foot on the floor at all times during a romantic scene? Not that Lawrence Tierney and Elisha Cook sharing a bed makes for a particularly romantic moment, but there's clearly more than a casual friendship between Sam and Marty.
Yes. Okay. I can guarantee you that the production code made no comment about it whatsoever, and it was not a thing where they were saying, oh, Sam has to keep 1 foot on the floor, because that would indicate that they recognized a homosexual subtext in it, which they would never do. They would never do, which is why so much homosexual subtext exists in all these noir films of the 1940s. It is pretty clear when you watch that movie that there's something between these guys and that they were probably cellmates.
Yeah.
And that Mart, as he's called in the movie, probably made it through prison because he was pals with Sam and Sam protected him. And, it's up to the viewer at that point to take it however they want to take it. I just think that Mart is clearly attached to Sam.
Yeah.
And that it's unreciprocated. I mean, Sam doesn't care about anybody but Sam, right?
Yeah.
So, but that it's clearly there.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to see 1 foot on the floor to make these insinuations,
Yeah. Okay. This is from Patrick. Is there any connection between the sewer scene in He Walked by Night and The Third Man? Specifically, were Reed and Green aware that they were essentially repeating an ending of an American film when they photographed The Third Man in the fall of 1948? He Walked by Night was released in November 1948, and the photography on The Third Man concluded December 1948. So it seems unlikely Reed and Green were aware they were close to duplicating the U.S. ending, yet the similarities are striking.
No, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe Carol Reed saw that movie and said, this is great, I'm stealing this. But I doubt it.
Yeah.
I just don't think it works out timing wise. But I will say that this happens more than you might think, where something is suddenly in the air. And then it ends up in these movies, and it's like, we hadn't thought that you could do this before. And in some cases, it's not like they're stealing an idea. It's like all of a sudden, like maybe the cameras are different, and it's like, oh, we could actually shoot in a sewer or something. There's also the scene. I mean, you've seen El Vampiro Negro, and there's a sewer scene at the end of that film that tops them all, really. Yeah. And I don't know that I would say that, oh, they obviously were stealing that from The Third Man, or I'm just not sure. I know that He Walked by Night, that was based on a true story in which Erwin Walker, the character that Richard Basehart is playing, that's how he escaped. That's based on fact. So going into the sewers was not an artistic decision. It was part of the story. Whereas in The Third Man, I think it was clearly Graham Greene's idea that how low can you go, right? I mean, that was it. Like, we're going to chase Harry Lime into the sewer like a rat.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I don't think, it's one or the other. There's also another movie right about that time, 7-Eleven Ocean Drive, that although it's not a sewer, it's at Boulder Dam, and it's the same thing. It's a long chase scene through these concrete, you know, corridors and stuff that feels, and there's water all over the place, and it feels very similar. It's fascinating to me how I'm more interested in, like, why is it that everybody got the idea at the same time than I am in, like, well, this one did it first and these other ones must have copied it.
Yeah.
Because I don't really think it works that way necessarily. It's just all of a sudden it happens.
Yeah. And this is from Michelle. I noticed on Sunday that Act of Violence had an opening title card, but no opening credits, as was conventional then. Was this considered daring for the time? I read that Orson Welles may have done this for the first time in the movies with Citizen Kane. What's the history of choosing to show credits only at the end of the film?
I don't actually know the answer to that. And I don't know that it would have been considered shocking. If anything, I found it, to me, the thing that was surprising was that usually actors of the stature of Van Heflin, especially Van Heflin, and Mary Astor, would have something in their contract that would stipulate the way their name was to appear on screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while it may have appeared like at the end of Act of Violence, it says, you have just seen Van Heflin and Robert Ryan in Act of Violence, and their names are side by side on the screen at the same size. Yeah. Right. So that was definitely like co-billing, but then they had to negotiate which actor gets their name first.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen this this is like Robert Redford and Paul Newman. Yeah. You know, they would put somebody's name would go second, but it'd go higher or something like that. You know, Steve McQueen and Paul Newman in The Towering Inferno, that was like a big battle of the billing, you know. But maybe it didn't stipulate that it had to be at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So they just stuck it at the end. And I just think that that was one more really brilliant aspect of Fred Zinnemann's handling of that movie, was the decision to just jump right into it and put you into that. When Ryan goes into the hotel and pulls the gun out of the drawer and clicks it, you know, and it says Act of Violence. And then you're just in the story. There's no titles, there's no actors or anything. And then he leaves it for the end. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and I always love it when people do that. I really love it when the credits are only at the end of the film. I think it can be very effective. I mean, I guess maybe it doesn't matter with some films, but I always think it's because, I don't know, it just sucks me in faster when they make the decision to do
There's
that.
nothing like a good title sequence if it sets up the movie. If it's just white titles on a black or kind of boring establishing shots with titles over them, I don't get it. What's the point? You know, it's in my head because I just watched it. In the Blue Gardenia, the titles are terrible. It's just like static shots of downtown LA and the freeway and the Blue Gardenia. It means nothing to the rest of the movie. They should have just jumped right into that plot, you know, with none of that extraneous stuff. But, you know, those brilliant title sequences are few and far between. I think it's better to leave it till the end, honestly.
Okay, and this is our last question. This is from Marty in Delaware. Eddie, do you watch much TV? If so, what do you watch besides TCM? Thanks for the great work you both do.
I mean, I don't watch much TV. I tend to, you know, listen to whatever Anne recommends, and then I will watch that. You know, I finally, I got around to Better Call Saul. I haven't watched commercial television, right? NBC, CBS, ABC, in probably 15 years. There's absolutely nothing on commercial television that I will watch. I don't even watch sports on commercial television anymore. That ship has sailed for me. But cable TV and stuff, yeah, I'll watch the occasional thing. But I'm going to say, I stream a lot of stuff now because I can find things that are so interesting that aren't really on, cable TV. I'm binging this show now called Midnight Diner,
Yeah.
which is set in Tokyo about a guy who has a tiny little diner in a back alley and all these stories of the people who eat there from midnight till 7 a.m. It's like old radio shows. They're like 23-minute little episodes about the lives of these people. I just love the way the show is written, and I love the character of this guy who runs the diner. And he looks like Toshiro Mifune or something, and he smokes cigarettes and he cooks food and he philosophizes with people, and I just really dig that show.
What's the name of the show again?
Midnight Diner.
Because that sounds amazing.
It's on Netflix, and it's shot in like super high def, which normally I don't like, but it works for this show. It's really interesting. And yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that I tend to look for. I've also been watching this funny from Denmark, this funny, a very, whoops.
Yeah.
Happened again.
Yeah.
Can you fix it? Because I've never done anything so far to fix it.
I haven't actually been doing anything either.
Oh, okay. Oh, there it's back. Okay.
It's coming back on its own.
Okay, so I've also been watching this show from Denmark. And it's from Denmark called Rita.
Oh yeah, I've seen the first couple episodes of that.
Yeah, it's a school teacher. I find it. I don't want to see the American redo of this because it won't be any good.
Yeah.
Because it's so enlightening to see how they approach these things. The stories of the kids and the politics of the school and all this stuff, and just her character, how she's so, she's not the heroine of the show.
No.
She's just this kind of screwed up woman who's a really good teacher, but has a lot of problems with her family. And it sounds really bad describing it, but then you watch the show and it's very entertaining. She's terrific.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've watched and highly recommend the show, another Danish show called Borgen. Which is amazing. It's like the best. I think it's like the best political show I've ever seen. Because like sometimes I find those kind of boring, but this one is just incredible. It's about this woman who becomes the first woman prime minister of Denmark. But that actress from Rita plays a completely different type of character and has a small role in a couple episodes. And she's like a pediatrician. She's like, and it's just, you just realize what a good actress she is because those roles could not be more different.
Yeah. And also the way they depict sex is a little bit different than what you get in America, and it's like, holy cow, it's like watching, I don't know who would be like an American TV star suddenly doing it on the desktop, it's like, holy cow, that was a little surprising too.
Yeah.
But that, I've talked before about Velvet, the Spanish soap opera thing that I watched. I've finally ended that obsession. We've talked early on in this about Babylon Berlin and how much I was absolutely, loved that show. That's like one of my favorite TV series of all time. But, and Saul, Better Call Saul, we're all waiting breathlessly for that to come back.
No, they're shooting.
The final season. Yeah, they're shooting it now. But that's it. That's my TV watching. It's nothing extraordinary. People can on the feed here on Facebook, people can throw on like their favorites that are recommended because I'm always looking for stuff. I'm one of those guys who has a hard time finding something to watch, if I'm just doing it for quote unquote recreation, because most of the time I'm watching stuff that I have to watch, and even if it's something I've seen 10 times, if like this Noir series on TCM, I had to go back and watch all 15 of these movies again because I wanted it to be fresh in my mind. You know, I don't want to get taken by surprise like the beast with 5 fingers, and like I don't really remember that much about it.
Yeah.
So I do have to go back and review stuff all the time. Anyway, Anne, that was great. We're like right on time.
Yeah.
And we have plenty more questions for the next installment, I'm sure. So, but that was a good ration of queries.
Yeah. And I just want to thank everybody again that sends in questions, and thank you for subscribing to our newsletter. Because basically when we send out our newsletter, then that's when we request questions. So if you would like to have a question answered on the show at some point, you can subscribe to our newsletter for free at filmnoirfoundation.org. And the thing that I've been enjoying is that there's been such a variety of questions and the different things that people ask about. And it's just great.
Yeah, it's sensational. I'm extremely pleased. I really thought this was going to be like we'll do this a couple of times as a stopgap or something, because we weren't doing festivals and all that. But it's been so much fun, and people have responded so well that I think we're just going to keep on doing it.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for watching. And if you have not seen, if you're new to watching us, you can go to our YouTube channel, North City SF, and all our episodes are posted on our YouTube channel. Along with, there's also a lot of great content on there actually that are interviews from our festivals where we've interviewed people on stage, and so it's kind of cool to check out anyway.
Excellent, great. And then of course the new issue of the magazine is underway, and I said the festival in LA, July 9th to the 11th. And then we'll have a lot more info for everybody the next time we see you. So
awesome.
Thanks a million. And always good to see you. And
always good to see you too.
We'll do this again very soon. Bye, everybody.
Good night.